Captain Riley Morgan had one job: represent humanity with dignity at the first official Galactic Council meeting. Just one simple job. Don't make Earth look bad. Don't start an interplanetary incident. And absolutely, positively, do not make jokes about Ambassador Glorp's tentacles resembling overcooked spaghetti. But here she was, watching in horror as the ambassador's color-shifting membrane flashed warning patterns while translators struggled to explain what a dad joke was and why humans insisted on making them during critical diplomatic negotiations. I still fail to understand. Glorp's mechanical translator buzzed. You said my negotiation stance reminded you of, and I quote, an octopus trying to parallel park. This serves no diplomatic purpose. Riley cleared her throat. It's called humor, Ambassador. It's how humans release tension. She could feel the sweat beating on her forehead. 6 months of diplomatic training hadn't prepared her for explaining comedy to beings who evolved from prey species with no concept of humor. Ambassador Vex, a tall, spindly representative from the Regelian Collective, leaned forward. His exoskeleton clicked with curiosity. Our species has studied your humor extensively. It appears to be a strange adaptation connected to your predatory nature. You find amusement in unexpected outcomes, often involving potential harm or social discomfort. Yet you claim to be peaceful. Curious contradiction. That's not exactly Riley began. Humans laugh at pain, interrupted Glorp, membrane now pulsing an alarming shade of mauve. They bare their teeth, their literal bone-crushing biological weapons when pleased. They chase moving objects instinctively, and they make jokes during peace negotiations. The room fell silent as 50 alien diplomats stared accusingly at Riley. She desperately wished she had that neuralizer thing from Men in Black right about now. Look, she said finally, humor is complicated. Yes, we evolved as predators, but we also evolved empathy and social bonds. Laughter is how we signal that something isn't actually threatening. It's how we build trust. Ambassador TZKZKZK, a hive mind representative consisting of thousands of tiny beetle-like creatures forming a roughly humanoid shape, scattered slightly in agitation before reforming. Trust building through deception about danger? Most suspicious. Riley sighed. This was going to be a very long diplomatic mission. Day 37 of human observation, Kloop dictated while his research partner Trindle adjusted the monitoring equipment. The subjects continued to display bewildering behavioral inconsistencies. The 2 alien scientists had been assigned to study human behavior after the diplomatic incident, hiding in plain sight thanks to molecular disguise technology that made them appear as ordinary humans. Their current assignment, a suburban neighborhood barbecue in Minnesota. The dominant male human, designation Dave, has spent 3 hours slowly cooking animal flesh over open flame, Kloop continued. This confirms their predatory ancestry. Yet he wears an apron featuring a cartoon cow advising others to eat more chicken. They make light of their own carnivorous nature. Trindle's 6 eyes blinked in succession beneath his human holographic disguise. Most fascinating is their dual nature. Observe the juvenile humans engaging in what appears to be predatory practice. Across the lawn, a group of children played tag, chasing each other with squeals of delight. They mimic hunting behaviors from an early age, Kloop noted. Running, stalking, capturing. Yet when they catch their prey, they simply touch them and release them to continue the hunt. No consumption occurs. And there, Trindle pointed, the ritual practical joke. The adolescent human has replaced the water in his progenitor's drinking vessel with a clear carbonated substance. They watched as a teenager snickered while his father took a swig from what he thought was water, only to sputter in surprise at the taste of seltzer. The young human deliberately caused discomfort to his elder, Yet both now display teeth and emit rhythmic vocalizations. They appear to be bonding through this minor act of aggression. Trindle sounded utterly perplexed. Kloop's recording device whirred. According to our research, humans have created 27,394 distinct variants of the whoopee cushion alone. They have constructed entire entertainment industries around watching others experience surprise, embarrassment, or minor distress. And yet, Trindle added, the same species that developed practical jokes also created thermonuclear weapons capable of planetary extinction. They channeled their predatory instincts into both harmless fun and devastating weaponry, often using the former to cope with the latter's existence. That evening, they observed humans watching a horror movie, a particularly baffling experience. They are deliberately exposing themselves to simulated predatory threats, Kloop whispered as the humans on screen ran screaming from a monster. And they paid currency for this experience. Look, Trindle pointed excitedly. When the threat appears suddenly, they first gasp in fear, then immediately transition to laughter. They derive pleasure from their own fear response when they confirm no actual danger exists. Later that night, they compiled their findings for the Galactic Council. In conclusion, Kloop recorded, humans appear to use humor as an evolutionary adaptation that bridges their predatory instincts with their social requirements. They simulate predator-prey scenarios constantly through games, jokes, and entertainment. They chase each other for fun, startle each other intentionally, and laugh at potential danger specifically because they recognize it as non-threatening. Trindle added a final observation. Humanity's capacity for humor may be directly linked to their status as predators who developed complex societies requiring cooperation. Other predatory species in the galaxy lack humor entirely and struggle with social cohesion. Prey species like ourselves never developed it because survival required treating all threats as genuine. Only humans occupy this strange middle ground. They are predators who laugh at their own predatory nature. Kloop nodded solemnly. The question remains, does this make them more dangerous than purely predatory species or less? The grand chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 87 spacefaring civilizations gathered to discuss the human problem. The central holographic display showed Earth rotating slowly, looking deceptively peaceful from space. High Counselor Vrex, a towering insectoid whose species had evolved from herd-dwelling grazers, tapped his ceremonial staff against the floor. The assessment phase will now commence. We gather today to determine whether humans should be classified as a Class 3 predatory threat requiring containment protocols. The evidence presentation began with clinical detachment. Footage of human history played across the chamber, hunting scenes, wars, competitive sports, action movies, and weapons development. Any council members recoiled visibly. Their entertainment directly simulates hunting and killing, noted Representative Ploon, whose species had evolved from filter-feeding aquatic organisms. They call it fun to pursue and capture others. They train their young with games of chase and hide and seek, added another. Clear predatory rehearsal behaviors. The xenobiologist MRR Ta floated forward, her gas bag body pulsing gently. Most concerning is their unpredictability. Unlike pure predator species, humans don't follow consistent threat patterns. They switch between aggression and cooperation instantaneously. They laugh during combat. They make jokes while hunting. It destabilizes all standard threat assessment algorithms. Captain Riley Morgan, who had been watching silently from the Earth observation booth, finally requested speaking permission. The Council reluctantly activated her communication channel. With respect, High Counselor, she began, you're missing half of the equation. Yes, we evolved as predators, but our humor is precisely what makes us less dangerous, not more. The chamber filled with skeptical murmurs. Consider this, Riley continued. Every predatory species you've encountered in the galaxy, the Dracoids of Epsilon, the Varan hunters, they're all humorless, correct? Singularly focused on dominance. Several council members reluctantly nodded. That's because humor requires self-awareness and empathy. It requires recognizing incongruity, the gap between expectation and reality. When humans laugh, we're acknowledging that gap, often at our own expense. We're saying, I see how ridiculous this is. That's a profound form of intelligence that pure predators lack. The council chamber remained unconvinced. Riley sighed and tried a different approach. Let me demonstrate. In human diplomatic training, we're taught that tension can be diffused through appropriate humor. She activated her neural link to the chamber's display system and projected an image of herself tripping during the first contact ceremony, falling face first into what she'd thought was a decorative pool, but turned out to be Ambassador Glorp's juvenile offspring. A few council members twitched in what might have been amusement. By sharing this embarrassing moment by making myself vulnerable, I signal that I don't consider myself superior. I acknowledge my mistakes. Pure predators never do this. They can't afford to show weakness. High Counselor Vrex leaned forward. An interesting hypothesis, Human Morgan. But how does your humor prevent your species from becoming a galactic threat? Your history is filled with violence. Because humor creates space between impulse and action, Riley replied. When we can laugh at something, we gain perspective on it. Throughout our history, our greatest warmongers have been those who couldn't take a joke, while our peacemakers often used humor to bridge seemingly impossible divides. She displayed footage of peace negotiations throughout human history, highlighting moments where tension-breaking jokes had prevented escalation. Furthermore, she continued, humor requires seeing from another's perspective, imagining how they would perceive something. That's the foundation of empathy, which constrains our predatory instincts. The council deliberated among themselves through their telepathic neural network. Finally, Vrex spoke. Your arguments are noted, Human Morgan. However, theoretical constraints on aggression are insufficient proof. The council remains concerned that your species combines predatory capability with unpredictable behavior patterns. Riley thought quickly. Then let me propose a practical demonstration. A contest of sorts. Contest. The word rippled through the council with alarm. Not combat, she clarified hastily. A comedy competition. Let representatives from different species attempt to create and understand humor. You'll see firsthand how humor builds bridges rather than walls. After much debate, the council agreed, though with clear reservations. As they filed out, High Counselor Vrex approached Riley privately. I hope you know what you're doing, human, he said quietly. Many on the council were already prepared to vote for quarantine protocols. Your species walks a dangerous line between potential ally and potential threat. Riley nodded solemnly. That line is exactly where humor lives, Counselor. Right on the edge between danger and safety. That's what makes it powerful. The Grand Galactic Auditorium, normally reserved for solemn ceremonies marking astronomical phenomena, had been hastily converted into something resembling a comedy club. Soft lighting, circular tables, and a central stage created an atmosphere that Riley hoped would facilitate humor. Representatives from 12 species had volunteered as contestants, each determined to demonstrate their capacity for this strange human concept called comedy. Riley had spent the previous day attempting to explain basic comedic principles, with varying degrees of success. Welcome to the first intergalactic comedy showcase, she announced to the packed audience of curious aliens. Each contestant will attempt a short comedic routine. Remember, the goal isn't just to be funny, but to demonstrate how humor functions as a social bonding mechanism. First up was Ambassador Glorp, whose translucent body pulsed with nervous energy. I will now attempt a joke using the formula Human Morgan provided. Glorp announced formally. Why did the carbon-based life form cross the vacuum? To reach the other side of the vacuum. Glorp stood completely still, awaiting reaction. Crickets, or rather the alien equivalent absolute silence except for the soft hissing of atmospheric processors. You see, Glorp explained desperately. The humor arises from the impossibility of crossing a vacuum without protective equipment. The life form would expire, creating an unexpected outcome which humans find amusing. Riley winced. This was going to be harder than she thought. Next came TZKTZK, the hive mind colony, who had arranged themselves into a shape resembling a human stand-up comedian, complete with a tiny microphone. A human, a Regelian, and a Betelgeusian enter a space station, began TZKZK, thousands of tiny voices speaking in unison. The human immediately begins assessing all life forms for potential consumption or mating. This is because humans are bizarre omnivores with inappropriate boundaries. The punchline was delivered with perfect comedic timing, but somehow missed the mark entirely. Riley buried her face in her hands. After several more disastrous attempts, including a Vulnarian's 20-minute joke with no punchline and a Melosian's routine consisting entirely of accurately describing human anatomy, which they somehow found hilarious, Riley decided to change tactics. Let's try something different, she announced. Rather than formal jokes, let's play an improvisational game. I'll create scenarios, and volunteers will act them out. She quickly set up a simple scene. 2 aliens were stranded on a remote planet with only one survival kit. Rather than the expected conflict, Riley guided them toward finding an absurd, unexpected solution involving using the survival manual as a flotation device. To her surprise, several council members began making soft, wheezing sounds the closest many species could come to laughter. They were getting it. Building on this success, Riley introduced increasingly complicated scenarios that required cooperation, creativity, and the ability to find humor in dire situations. Gradually, the aliens began to understand. They weren't just learning to tell jokes, they were experiencing how humor functioned as a survival mechanism, a way to build trust and reduce threat. The breakthrough came when High Counselor Vrex, who had been watching silently, volunteered for a scenario. Place me in your most challenging humorous situation, he demanded. Riley paired him with a dracoid representative, a species notorious for their aggressive territorialism. She created a scenario where they were forced to share an impossibly small space habitat. What followed was remarkable. The 2 ancient enemies, guided by Riley's coaching, found themselves constructing increasingly ridiculous solutions to their space problem. When Vrex suggested they could take turns existing in the 3rd dimension, alternating with periods in subspace, the entire auditorium erupted in the diverse sounds of alien amusement. You see, Riley addressed the council afterward. That's how humor works. It creates a shared reality where we acknowledge absurdity together. When the counselor and the dracoid laughed at the same thing, they momentarily shared a worldview. That's powerful. Ambassador Vex, who had been silently observing throughout, finally spoke. I believe I understand now. Your predatory instincts give you the ability to recognize threat patterns and subvert them, unexpectedly creating humor. But instead of using this for pure aggression, you use it to create social bonds that transcend your predatory nature. Riley nodded. Exactly. Humans aren't dangerous because we're predators with a sense of humor. We're valuable allies because we're predators who evolved a sense of humor as a check on our own predatory impulses. The council seemed almost convinced when suddenly the chamber's emergency broadcast system activated. Attention all council species, the automated system announced. Unidentified vessels have breached the outer defense perimeter. Preliminary analysis indicates Void Ravager biosignatures. The chamber erupted in panic. Void ravagers were the stuff of galactic nightmares and ancient predatory species that consumed all organic matter in their path, but with no known civilization or culture beyond hunting. They hadn't been seen in this sector for generations. Activating emergency protocols, the High Counselor announced, his exoskeleton clicking in distress. All non-combatant species proceed to shelter pods. Riley watched as the council chamber divided along evolutionary lines. The species that had evolved from prey animals were freezing in place or fleeing in disorganized panic. Meanwhile, the few predatory species were forming aggressive postures, already arguing about direct confrontation tactics. "Wait," Riley shouted over the chaos. "This is exactly what we were discussing. Let humans help coordinate the response." The council hesitated, then granted emergency authority to the human delegation. Riley quickly activated her neural link to the station's tactical systems. "First, we need information," she said calmly. "Let's not assume these are actually void ravagers. That species supposedly went extinct millennia ago." Scans revealed the approaching ships were indeed using void ravager signatures, but something was off about their approach pattern. Instead of the direct assault typical of pure predators, they were hanging back, almost taunting. "They're trying to scare us," Riley realized. "This is psychological warfare." She gathered a crisis team combining members from different evolutionary backgrounds, prey species for their caution and awareness, predator species for their tactical thinking, and humans for their unique middle ground. "We need a strategy that combines defense, offense, and something completely unexpected," she explained. "Something that uses their predatory nature against them." What followed was perhaps the strangest battle plan in galactic history. First, they used the prey species' natural caution to create an effective early warning and evasion system, keeping civilian populations safe. Next, they positioned the predatory species' warships in an aggressive but disciplined formation. But the centerpiece of the strategy was purely human, psychological warfare through humor. "If these are truly intelligent predators," Riley explained, "then they expect either flight or direct confrontation. They'll have no concept of being laughed at, of becoming the prey of mockery, rather than the dealer of fear." The human team hijacked the Void Ravager's communication systems and began broadcasting across all frequencies, comedy. Specifically, they projected enormous holographic displays visible from space, showing the approaching Ravager ships reimagined as cute, harmless cartoon characters complete with googly eyes and tiny arms. They transmitted manipulated footage, making the fearsome Ravager warriors appear to be dancing to human children's songs. They sent mathematical proof that the Ravagers' fearsome weapons were, in fact, anatomical compensation for evolutionary inadequacies. "What are you doing?" demanded one of the predatory counselors. "You're provoking them." "No," Riley explained, watching the reaction carefully. "We're confusing them. Predators understand being feared or being fought. They have no framework for being mocked." Sure enough, the Ravager fleet's formation began to falter as they encountered something outside their evolutionary experience. Their coordinated attack patterns became erratic as individual ships broke formation, some advancing aggressively while others held back in apparent confusion. In this moment of disarray, Riley implemented the next phase: direct communication. "Attention Void Ravager vessels," she broadcast. "We've identified you as the Mortuk mercenary company using stolen Ravager technology to intimidate less advanced systems. Your scam is exposed. Stand down or face consequences from both the Council and your victims." There was a long pause before a reply came through. How did you know?" Riley smiled. It had been a calculated guess, but predators using psychological tactics rather than direct assault didn't fit the Void Ravager profile. Real apex predators don't play with their food. "Because real predators don't have a sense of humor," she replied. and you clearly don't understand the difference between causing fear and becoming a laughing stock. The mercenary ships their bluff called quickly surrendered rather than face the now unified council forces. What could have been a massacre became instead the galaxy's most unusual de-escalation. 3 standard months later, Captain Riley Morgan stood before the Galactic Council to receive their official ruling on humanity's classification. The chamber was packed with representatives from across the galaxy, the recent crisis having raised Earth's profile considerably. High Counselor Vrex tapped his staff for attention. After extensive deliberation and in light of recent events, this council has reached a unanimous decision regarding humanity's status within the galactic community. Riley held her breath. Everything hinged on this moment. Humans will be classified as a Category 7 species, evolutionary anomaly with diplomatic significance. Vrex's mandibles clicked in what Riley now recognized as his species equivalent of a smile. In simple terms, you are officially weird, but useful. Relieved laughter spread through the human delegation. Our xenobiologists have created a new evolutionary classification to describe your species, Vrex continued. You are now formally recognized as Predatory empathsis, the only known species to combine apex predator instincts with highly developed emotional intelligence. Ambassador Glorp floated forward, membrane pulsing happy colors. The recent crisis demonstrated what your delegation had been trying to explain. Your humor is not a quirk or a liability, it is an evolutionary advantage that allows you to toggle between predator and diplomat with unique flexibility. In the face of threat, added Ambassador TZKZKZKZ. Thousands of tiny voices harmonizing. Prey species like mine freeze or flee. Pure predator species attack directly. Only humans had the capacity to recognize the psychological dimension of the conflict and respond with psychological countermeasures. You laughed in the face of danger, Vrex concluded. Literally. Our species cannot do this. We either feel danger or we don't. We cannot simultaneously recognize threat and find it amusing. This cognitive dissonance you call humor gives you unique insights. Riley smiled. So we're officially allies now? More than allies, Vrex replied. We are establishing a new galactic crisis response division with humans in key leadership positions. Your evolutionary quirk finding humor in danger makes you uniquely qualified to handle the unexpected. As the formalities concluded, Riley found herself surrounded by curious aliens eager to learn more about human humor. She watched as human delegates attempted to teach alien representatives the fine art of the practical joke, with mixed but entertaining results. Ambassador Glorp approached, still wearing what appeared to be a novelty bow tie a human delegate had given him. I believe I finally understand the function of humor in diplomatic relations, Captain Morgan. It creates what you call inside jokes, shared experiences that build group cohesion across species boundaries. Riley nodded. Exactly. When we laugh together, we're acknowledging that we share a perspective, even momentarily. That's powerful. Indeed. Glorp's translator hummed thoughtfully. Our xenopsychologists now theorize that humor developed in humans precisely because you needed something to counterbalance your predatory instincts within social structures. Without it, your species might have destroyed itself long before achieving spaceflight. That's actually pretty accurate, Riley admitted. As she looked around the chamber at the unprecedented mingling of species, Riley couldn't help but feel proud. Humans had finally found their niche in the galactic community, not despite being evolutionary oddities, but because of it. You know what they say, she told Glorp with a grin. He who laughs last, thinks slowest. Glorp's translation device buzzed in confusion. That makes no logical sense, Captain. Riley just smiled. Give it time, Ambassador. You'll get there. Somewhere across the galaxy, a punchline was waiting to be understood.